My sound, my fidelity is pretty crap. So Jonas is sending me a better microphone. Hopefully it's in place by the next episode, and you will have me in high def. Sweet, sweet balm for the ears.
Hello and welcome to Pod Hard, a podcast about action movies with me, Jonas Högberg, and in the other ring corner,
Anders Hultqvist.
the Hultqvist.
Yeah, the man, the myth.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. This will be our second episode in English, and we're still a bit finicky about it, but I'm sure we'll do just fine. Last episode, we talked about the really early cinema. And in this episode, we will be talking about the 1910s, the entire decade, which has been a heavy-duty work for us to really capture the essence of the tens.
I don't even know if that is what we're trying to do, but...
We will be tracing the history of action cinema, so... drama and stuff like that we will simply skip because this is a podcast about action movies, so we're only interested in the action. So in this episode we'll be talking a lot about serials and comedies, but also a bit about technical achievements and some Italian big epic movies. So, Anders, where do we begin?
We take it from the top, I guess. 1910. Not much going on. I don't know. I'm gonna have to edit out.
Well, this is interesting because we talked about this before starting our recording, that you can really see the progression of the language of cinema in the tens, because like the first 5 years or so, there's very little interesting stuff, and then as people are getting the hang of editing, pacing, and constructing sets and thinking outside of the box, you get some really nice movies.
I think we were surprised that so much was already in place so early last episode.
Yeah.
And now it's pretty obvious that they're experimenting with narrative and editing techniques more. This telling a story is a bit heavy. Here early, but I watched a bunch of early D.W. Griffith movies as well, and I don't think they are that fun.
No, definitely not.
I can see that he has been important for refine parallel editing somewhat here early.
Yeah.
But it is techniques that we have already seen in those early experimental movies.
Yeah.
So he refines it somewhat, but he's quite obsessed with the Civil War era and also women locked inside rooms with hobos coming at them from the outside.
Yeah. You know, that was drama back in the day.
But he has some great mass scenes. I like how all his battle scenes are just covered in smoke. In the end, you can't see anything. It's a pretty cool effect.
Yeah. We like that sort of stuff. Wasn't there some kind of fog like war scenes in The Last of the Mohicans that we really... Oh yeah, this is... fantastic stuff. So
The Fog of War.
The Fog of War, exactly.
So the most impressive movie from Griffith was, I think, Fighting Blood, where there's a bunch of dudes in a shack that is shooting a bunch of guys outside, and there's just smoke everywhere.
Okay. And Griffith, he wasn't alone in constructing more narrative-focused movies with parallel editing. There was a female director who... Well, I guess I would at least say that she topped Griffith's visual experiments. Lois Weber.
Yeah, Suspense from 1913. This seems to establish a lot of horror and thriller tropes as well.
She has some really nice framing of the camera. You can really see a lot of these early movies from the 10s. They don't really know where to put the camera. So they just try to capture a lot of action as possible, to get a lot of dudes into the frame, running around doing crazy stuff. But when you actually think about the placements of the camera, that's when you can create something like suspense in suspense. There's a car chase that is really nice edited. You get they place the camera on top of the chasing car, behind the person standing on the car, and so you get the feeling of, I'm on the car chasing that other car together with these guys, and then they cut to a shot of the car being chased, the car in front, and the camera focuses on the rear view mirror and looking at the car chasing.
That shot is awesome. You even have a glimpse of a police trying to climb from the pursuing car onto the chased car.
Yeah.
And that is also framed in the rearview mirror.
A lot of these fantastic shots really make for a pleasant viewing. I mean, the movie isn't something really special plot-wise. It's very basic. It's a lot like the D.W. Griffith movies.
Yeah, it felt like a variation on that theme, but better made.
There's a hobo trying to get to a woman and her child in a home. And this guy being chased by the cops is trying to get home and save the woman.
But it has point of view shots as well. I was thinking when she watches outside from the second floor, there's an above head shot. I thought about Psycho when the camera is placed right above. And then we have the first that I have noticed, healing car. I was thinking of you when it's coming around the corner and wobbles.
Oh yeah.
From the speed.
Yeah. How do you say healing? Is that the word, healing?
That's an direct translation. I don't know.
Okay. In Swedish we would say krängande, when the top of the car is like trying to get loose from the bottom of the car. It's really pushing away from the car when doing the turn. And I love that so much. I think it's so visual, so spectacular, so exciting. And we see that a lot in 70s movies, but as we see here, everything was done super early on, of course.
So we can say Louis Weber refined Griffith's refinements. And later on, Griffith will go all out with Birth of a Nation, his Clan revival movie. I think Michael Bay is commenting on that one in the opening to Bad Boys 2. That opens on a Klan meeting and has directed by Michael Bay on top of a burning cross. I think he wants to comment on this ugly side of American cinema history.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, Michael Bay himself has been accused of racism. The robots in Transformers. He is a bit of a strange case.
Absolutely. I don't even know if this is conscious.
Probably not, yeah.
But he digs up an ugliness.
Yeah, so the D.W. Griffith, he got a lot of flack for Birth of a Nation, actually. Not only praise. And that's part of the reason he made Intolerance later on, to try to show, hey, don't point fingers at me, look at what I can do, we need to have tolerance for each other, and stuff like that. But
isn't it more on tolerance for him?
Yeah, probably. Let's just leave D.W. Griffith. He isn't worth our time.
But okay, the comedians that will show up later, I think we should at least mention Max Linder, French comedian, who seemed to be a precursor, because he seems to be the first one who is a continuous character throughout several movies.
Yeah, and this was important for the 10s for all the comedians. They really refined a personality, a person, a character that they could adopt in all of their movies that would sort of, you just put the character in different scenarios and stuff would happen. And this is the Max character. And so technical wise, there's a lot of technical achievements that happen in the tens. One of them that is already in place is matte painting. Another part of this using glass was rotoscoping. It was an animation technique that Max Fleischer invented in the later tens, where you would have someone perform for you, and then you could paint the character on top of that person. So he invented his character Coco the Clown for this purpose. And Coco was played by Max's brother, who was a clown. His first short, The Tantalizing Fly, from 1919. Now I'm skipping ahead a bit. I'm just talking technical achievements here. I thought that was a very funny animated movie where, they combine real movie with animated movie, sort of like Space Jam, I guess. So we've established that a lot of things are going on. Animation, visual effects. They achieved a new version of matte painting in the late 10s. Frank Williams patented a new version called traveling matte, which allowed filmmakers more freedom by putting actors in front of black background and then copying the material in high contrast negatives, which essentially got you early green screen. You could put up anything in the background and still have the person in front.
Yeah, so now that everything has been done already.
Yeah.
There's some quite fun meta things in some early Chaplin movies also. I was thinking about this film Johnny and the Masquerader from 1914, where Chaplin is going to the cinema and watches movies and is on set. Roscoe Arbuckle and Buster Keaton does this later in a very weird meta-textual movie where they're already commenting on the film.
Keystone Cops, they started out in 1912, so very early on, starting this movie studio, Keystone, in Hollywood, of course, where a lot of big movie studios had moved out and started making big movies. And due to the First World War, soon every single movie in the world would be American, because, the European studios would be sort of defunct after the war. And Hollywood would simply just take over the world. But this early on in the 1912s, that wasn't the case. And I'm sort of wondering why these persons were allowed to keep going, because the first Keystone Cops movies isn't really that good. They are simply, running around and seemingly without any direction or something.
The Keystone Cops are all mentioned as the first stunt team.
I'm not sure. The first stunt team, you say?
They were a group of clowns, vaudevillains. Vaudevillains, do you say that?
I guess.
Race car drivers and stuff.
I mean, persons with the vaudeville background, I guess. Vaudeville theater background.
There's a lot of falling on the ass. But we've seen that from the get-go. But there's also, yet again, the refinement of falling on the ass.
Two important guys, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle and Charlie Chaplin, becomes part of the Keystone Studios making movies in 1914, I think. I mean, Roscoe perhaps even earlier. And Roscoe is like this big character.
I think Roscoe is good at falling on his ass as well. But he has a tendency to drag out his comedy bits a bit. But you are a big fan of Barney Oldfield's Race for Life from 1913.
Oh yeah, that movie. Man, we almost skipped that movie. But Barney Oldfield's Race for Life has a fantastic ending to it that makes it a must-see of the tens, I think. Partly you see this, woman tied to a railway trope, which was established very early on, not in this movie, as people are saying. And I mean, this is something we talked about also. A lot of information about these old movies are seemingly incorrect. A lot of misinformation is being spread about who was first, what movie did what. stunt and stuff like
I
that.
think it's practically impossible to do those. This was first, and a lot of people pick this out as the first to use this woman tied on the railway variation, which I think was an established stage trope already. So, but the earliest we've seen on the movie was in the Train Wreckers from 1905, Edwin S. Porter's movie, which had a pretty cool stunt involving with a guy riding in front of the train, scooping up the lady.
So it was actually done the best earliest, because the trope in Barney Oldfield's Race for Life, it's pretty basic. They're rescuing the woman just in time as the train comes in. Pretty impressive stunt. They just get out of the way of the train. And I'm guessing they must have filmed this like in reverse, because the train was coming in very fast. I mean, even as they speed things up when showing the movie, it went very fast. So I'm guessing they did it backwards, as they did with a lot of stunts.
And about projection speeds.
Yeah, we got to talk about this, man. This was a revelation to me when I found out. They talk about silent movies that they were filmed in like 16 frames per second. Film today is like 24 frames per second when you're talking film. To get that crispy, almost, it's not really, but it's, that film feeling. But back in the early days, a lot was filmed in between 12 to 26 frames, actually. So they were filming in all kinds of frame speeds. But the thing was that when they sent out the films to the theaters, and the projectionist would shoot the movie, they would do it with a crank, cranking the speed. And they would get instructions from the movie company to crank in different speeds depending on where in the movie you were. So for instance, if you had like a speedy action sequence, you were to crank really fast to get the action to move really fast. And when you had like a talking scene, you would crank sort of normally. They were early, today we have VJs, video jockeys, but they were cinema jockeys. They were CJs. That's fantastic. So anyway, back to Barney Oldfield's Race for Life.
Yeah, you can't get over it.
I just gotta say this. At the end of the movie, the bad guy, which is like this cartoon character with big mustaches, he shoots a bunch of policemen coming on a trolley, and after he tries to shoot himself, when discovering that the gun doesn't have any bullets left, he starts choking himself on the train track. And succeeding, I'm guessing, he does like a swirl on the rail and falls over with his legs in the air. I mean, it's I can't find words for how fantastic this ending is. You need to check it out.
Meanwhile, in Italy, they did much more impressive mass scenes than Griffith could muster up. I mean, how many extras do they have in there? They just round them up.
Yeah, I'm guessing they just go around with a big bus, picking up people as they go. Hey, you want to be in a movie? Jump in. Let's go. Let's make a sword and sandal movie. They're making Spartacus. They're making The Siege of Troy. They're making all these great stories from the Roman era and further back, Greek era. It's not a really refined sort of action. It's just, they put up the camera and let people run around, but there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of impressive sets as well.
So the most impressive I've seen from this era was from The Warrior 1916, Massiste Alpino. I don't know, Massiste, is that a recurring, that's some kind of recurring character, because I have another Massiste movie from 1915, which is also pretty cool. We've only seen a part of The Warrior. This is a full feature movie, 90 minutes. There's these insane mountain climbing scenes in the beginning. They're carrying around cannons and, I don't know, everything. There's an army up in the mountains. It seems to be at location.
They projected a rope across a ravine, and they're climbing, with their arms over the rope, over the ravine, with big packs on their backs and being all butch and superhuman-like.
Yeah, and then this Massist character shows up in the later scenes, and he's some kind of early The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He just goes around and throws people around.
He's very good. I mean, nothing can hurt this guy. People are running around shooting at him, I think, but he isn't faced by anything.
I like when he kicks up a guy into his arms, some kind of wire stunt, and just throws him out a window. So I probably should have researched this Massist character, because then he shows up in another that has a pretty funny setup, Massist from 1915, where a girl is hunted by bad guys and she sneaks into the cinema and watches a movie and is so impressed by this big buff star that she seeks out the star of the movie to have him protect her.
Okay.
And it's most impressive because there's a brawl that just starts, and then it cuts to just a couple of seconds of a shootout in a dark room where you only see the room when there's muzzle flares from the guns. So there's like a shadow play and just smoke, and it's an early Johnny Toe scene. I don't know what it has to do with anything else in the movie. I guess the rest is lost or something.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on in Europe as well, but the most action you get for your money, that's in the United States of America. And one of the biggest action things going on in the tens is cereals. And the funniest thing about cereals is that almost, I wouldn't say every serial, but a lot of these serials have female action heroes in them. Female stars that do their own stunts, that write scenarios, that directs, that produces, that are like auteurs doing action, which I think is really smashing. I think the first serial, at least the first serial with a woman, is the Girl Spy series that actually started in 1909, so we should have done this the last episode, I guess. That was Jean Gauntier, and she did everything. She did one episode a week they would shoot for Girl Spy, which would be 10-15 minutes or something like that. A lot of these serials, they were a lot of them were railroad based. I don't know why everyone was so fascinated with railroads back then. But, that was if you want action in a movie, you gotta do it on a train, or in front of a train, or, swirling from a balloon above a train or something.
But I mean, those trains, heavy machines, they pretty good symbol of the industrialism that just runs amok or something.
Yeah, I guess.
It's also interesting that Griffith, in his movies, there's this sense of control, that you could control the train. And in the serials, it's more like the train breaks down or something, and
the train are out of control.
Yeah, it's out of control, but these women, they can adapt to the situation and overcome it, and adapt to the modernity, while Griffith is conservative and thinks that man already has control over the situation. The train is for him to handle or something.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's...
Very, very nice allegory, I think. Or what do you say? So, apart from Gauntier, you have a lot of female stars. You have Kathleen Williams, you have Pearl White, you have Helen Holmes. So there's a lot of big stars getting their fame from these serials and performing their own stunts. We've watched a bit of Pearl White's big series from The Perils of Pauline from 1914. A lot of these stuff are gone forever, unfortunately. And a lot of these serials episodes are gone as well. So we're only getting a bite-sized portion of it.
But I mean, these are the original action heroes, because everyone else is just falling on their ass. These women are doing hardcore stunts, and the shows are built around it as well. The narrative is set in motion. the train is going, and you're gonna jump on it from a car, from a plane. This is action movies. This is
action movies, and I mean, I haven't seen the Girl Spy movies. There's not that much preserved, but at least there is some from the Perils of Pauline, and Pearl White, she became like the queen of serials. She was, I guess, the most famous in the 10s, and she did a lot of her own stunts and actually injured her spine during the shooting of the Perils of Pauline. And I guess, she was doing a lot of stuff. She was holding onto a rope from a hot air balloon, floating through air, through Manhattan. Crazy stuff, actually, which we would attribute to Jackie Chan doing stuff like that. But these women were putting their lives in danger every week for these crazy serials. I think The Hazards of Helen is perhaps the most watchable of these old serials, which starred Helen Holmes for the first 48 episodes, and then another Helen took off. Helen Gibson took off 71 episodes. And there was actually a Swedish-American woman jumping in for Helen Holmes when she was sick, called Anna Q. Eriksson, which was big silent star. Yay for Sweden! We at least have something in this action vein here. So there's a lot of cool stunts, and I think Helen Gibson did a lot of really nice stunts. She did a very, very dangerous stunt where she leapt off the roof of it was like a station bridge over the train. So she jumped down on the train as the train passed in full motion. When she landed, she almost slid off the train, but managed to grab hold of a thing jutting out that she could project herself up to the roof again. This was like ordinary day job for her.
And that's from that cool scene where she starts on a horse, doesn't she? Hunts down a car, has a fight on the car, takes the car, rides it to a bridge, and jumps from the car to the train. I mean, that's a pretty cool action sequence.
Absolutely. And there is a fantastic scene in Hazards of Helen. The camera is situated on the top of a train, and you see like two train workers. The train is moving through like a station, and you see a bridge atop. And you see suddenly, when the train workers are coming closer to the camera, a rope coming down from the bridge, and a woman, Helen, rappelling down the rope down onto the train. This is a really nice, cool shot, as it's framed from the point of view of the train, I guess.
Yeah, it's beautiful. From the Escape on the Fast Fright, 1915. It's a really cool shot.
Fantastic.
I had hoped she was gonna fight those guys when she landed on the train, but they help her instead. And she jumps from a motorcycle to a moving train as well in the open track from 1916.
Yeah, I mean they were daredevils. Helen Holmes wanted to race cars competitively, but couldn't because women wasn't allowed to do that. So when she got the opportunity to have her own film series, she took every opportunity to drive cars and do dangerous stunts with them, because nobody cared at the movie studios in the early days, and which I guess was good for women, because they were, being allowed to show that they could do every bit of stuff that the men could do, and were every bit of daredevil, more so, seemingly, doing these crazy stunts. Someone should do some real documenting of these serials. I think there's a lot of good stuff to be found here.
As you said, there was 119 episodes of Hazards of Helen.
Yeah, I think I've seen 3 or 4, but there's not that many preserved. So what you gonna do? So yeah, that's serials, and unfortunately they went out of style in the late 10s, and that's sort of marked the end for women doing their own stunts and having this creative control of movies.
Yeah, these serials were treated like B movies almost.
Yeah.
later on, and the feature film took over, I guess. I don't know exactly how, but I guess they became better at this narrative thing.
Well, let's hope.
Because the feature movies I've seen so far, in the action field at least, we have a very narrow scope here. I gotta admit, maybe someone did some.
Speaking of action heroes, there's at least one male action hero that sort of emerges in the tens. Douglas Fairbanks. I knew next to nothing about Douglas Fairbanks Sr., actually, but as I've read up on him, I have to say he seems like a really cool dude. He was sort of progressive. He looked over scripts, and when he saw like too much racist stuff in the script, he would often cross it out and try to, well, he was nice.
He tried to do something.
He tried to do something at least with the racist stuff that was going on at the time. And he was crazy. I mean, this guy was like a parkour king, like 90 years before people were beginning to do parkour.
And I mean, there's just these small touches as well that he does. He jumps over a chair or something, or just climbs a fence. And there's just these small details, physical details that he adds in. It reminded me a lot of Jackie Chan.
Yeah, so let's talk about your favorite Douglas Fairbanks movie of the tens, Manhattan Madness from 1916.
Yeah, so in the tens he was doing he will go on to do only costume movies, Musketeers and Zorro and stuff. But in the tens he was famous for this modern day man dude going around. I don't know. But Manhattan Madness from 1916, I thought it was a masterpiece. I love this movie. After all those Griffith movies that almost had me do in the tens, this was really fun. And it moved, it had crisp editing. Could be projection speed errors, I don't know. But some stuff has really fast editing. And just these small stuff, climbing chairs or stuff, and fun fights at the end, although very undercranked.
I think this is a good example of the cranking differences of speeds that would be performed by machinists. So there's you can see it being speed up. I mean, crazy much sometimes.
Yeah, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I agree. So it has a fantastic ending where, like, I mean, everybody's running around. And I don't know, the plot is very weird. I mean, he's like a guy from, what was he from, Nevada or something like that? I mean, like,
it's open with comparing New York to the out west.
Okay, yeah, the west.
He's a western guy.
Yeah.
And comes to the big city to meet up a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
And after some more or less funny, what do you say, comparison?
Yeah, between New York and the West.
Some are more fun and some are less fun, admittedly.
What? This is a masterpiece, Anders. What are you talking about?
So, yeah, it moves into territory where he says there's no excitement in the big city. They do this big plan where they involve him in some... He's supposed to believe there's a kidnapping and a jewel thief and stuff.
Yeah, so they like perform like the game for him or something like that.
So he can get in this big brawl. They all fight and he throws a guy down the stairs and they are out and
no,
climbing
you have to tell
jumping.
it from the beginning, man. Tell it from the beginning. I mean, he picks up a guy at the bottom of the stairs and he goes up the stairs, dragging this guy behind him on the stairs, and then when he reaches the top of the stairs, he picks him up and throws him down on all of the other people coming up the stairs, and they are tumbling down the stairs. Fantastic.
Exactly. That's what we call a masterpiece.
Well, I guess. And it's a sort of a dark ending as well when they reveal.
Yeah, spoiler alert. There's a twist ending as well.
Yeah, but first of all, I mean, suddenly he discovers that everybody has gone. He's like alone in the house, and he goes around. Where did everybody go? And suddenly he sees like a small hatch or something opening way in the background, and there's like a dude looking out at him and saying, "Oops," and like shutting the hatch. And he's like, What is happening? There's like a secret room somewhere." So he charges the hatch, breaks it down, and comes in to like a big room where everybody's like sitting around playing poker or something, and they're like, "Oh ho ho ho, we tricked you all right." And he gets like, "Oh yeah, but I tricked you because I'm the big bad dude of the West," like some Billy the Kid character from the West. So his whole band comes charging in like cowboys and stuff, taking everybody hostage. What is happening?
So, great movie. It's like Jackie Chan meets Buñuel. I recommend it. And then he gets shows a hint of where he is going in A Modern Musketeer that starts with a swashbuckling scene from 1917. We get a pre-taste. It's pretty good, actually. But the best fight in this one is when he sees a man who is not kind to a woman. So he follows this guy to a room and he tears it apart. He beats up everyone, he climbs on the walls and jump around, like Van Damme did in Knockoff. He just flies around in the room. He takes a table and squashes a guy with it and jumps on the table with this guy underneath.
You get a sense for his athleticism and his bravery and his willing to do everything for a scene. I mean, he certainly goes the distance.
I'm looking forward to delve deeper into Douglas Fairbanks.
Yes.
What we also get is his a bit annoying winking at the camera. He goes all in. I mean, he twirls his mustaches, gets up real close and just wink.
Sort of like Burt Reynolds in the 70s.
Yeah, just what I thought. An early Burt Reynoldsism.
Yeah. So anyway, let's sort of round this up with the finishing years of the 10s, where I think the comedy really shines. So let's head back to our friends Roscoe Arbuckle, Chaplin, and the introduction of Buster Keaton.
Yeah, so 1917 to 1919 is where they
go to town.
They perceive mastery at falling on your ass.
I mean, I'm not convinced of Chaplin. I think I can't quite understand why people like Chaplin so much. I mean, I guess it's like, oh, he produces social commentary, he has some narrative, but his bits are not that great.
I was thinking more, he kicks someone in the ass a couple of times and falls on the ass a couple of times. Let's just say he's not that important for action cinema.
But there is at least one good Chaplin movie of the 17s, I think, The Immigrant, where he uses like a seasickness camera. They are situated on a boat in rocky waters, and the camera is moving like with the boat. I'm not sure how they filmed this, but it's a really nice effect, like when everything turns from left to right all the time. He built some nice comedic bits around this, like when he and a mate is sitting eating, they're like sharing the same plate as the plate goes from one side of the table to the other, and they're like having one bite and the other is having one bite when the plate is moving over. At least that is somewhat worth checking in, I think. But the big one for the 10s, Roscoe Arbuckle, he comes into his own, I think, when he meets Buster Keaton. The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious from the get-go that Buster Keaton is a star.
Absolutely.
He just comes in and falls on his ass like no man has done before.
And that is so interesting. I mean, Buster Keaton was brought up to be this movie star from the get-go.
He was brought up falling on his ass.
Yeah, he was brought up falling on his ass. Literally. I mean, his parents was a traveling vaudeville act, and he was like a part of that act from like early on, a couple of years only, and he was given the name Buster allegedly by magician legend Harry Houdini, who was also a part of this traveling vaudeville act, after Buster had fall down a set of stairs age 6 months without a scratch.
Yeah, I mean, there are these myths. He's really great at building. I guess he has built a myth around himself. The one where he was carried away by a tornado as well as a child and carried to safety.
But I think it's somewhat true that the police would sort of investigate his parents from time to time, since they would throw him around in their sets, in their bits, in the vaudeville act. They actually invented like a special jacket for Buster, which had a small handle on Buster's back, so his father could pick him up, swirl him around, and throw him into the audience. This was his everyday. So Buster early on got the gist of how to fall. You know, landing limp, breaking the fall with a foot or a hand. It's sort of second nature to someone who has been thrown around every single day for his entire life. I mean, it looks like he's breaking his neck in every fall, but apparently, and you know, the only one time he really broke his neck was when he shot, was it like Our Hospitality or something like that? Sherlock Jr. perhaps? He is running on a train track and jumping onto a water thingamajig.
Yeah, that water disposal thing.
Yeah, and the water was so... when the water pushed him down onto the train tracks, he apparently knocked his head towards the train track and broke his neck. But he didn't feel that. He only discovered it years later after complaining about headaches to his doctor. This guy is like indestructible. A fun thing about Buster is that he left his mother and father at like age 19 and went to Broadway. On Broadway, he was discovered by Roscoe Arbuckle. The very same day that they met, they decided to shoot a scene and make a movie together, and that movie became The Butcher Boy.
Yeah, they throw a bunch of stuff in each other's faces. I mean, there was this trio of guys, Roscoe Arbuckle, Buster Keaton, and Al St. John made a bunch of movies together. I have a problem with Al St. John. He plays it really broad, grimacing and clowning, but he's a really great athlete. He has really cool acrobatic scene. I think it was in The Rough House, also from 1917.
You know, you can see Buster's influence on Roscoe from the get-go. I mean, Buster was hired not only as an assistant actor, he was also hired as an assistant director and as like the sole gag maker for Roscoe. So he like invented every single gag for these movies they made together. And there's a lot of finicky stuff. I mean, they're running around on ladders, sliding ladders, they're throwing flour bombs, they're getting stuck in molasses. And Buster, like, he has his look from the get-go. He has his big flat hat and a couple of goofy shoes. He's ready to go.
From an action perspective, I think maybe The Bellboy from 1918 is their biggest. It has their biggest set pieces that feels more action oriented.
I think The Bellboy is my favorite movie of the 10s, actually. I think it's funny almost all the way through and a lot of impressive gags and sets, and the ending is like free-form madness with a lot of parkour things going on. I love it.
The parkour bits, or what you should call them, are framed and shot so well. You can really feel that cleaner approach from Buster Keaton in setup. I think they have a really cool thing going on, which they almost perfect here in The Bellboy, which I saw traces of in The Rough House, where they do this thing where they throw things through the screen or people, and then they continue in the next shot in another room. So they throw things and people from frame to frame or from room to room, and it's really well made in The Bellboy.
So they're using a lot of comedy tropes in all these movies. I mean, one of the biggest is, I guess, the pie in the face, which someone has traced all the way back to 1909 in a movie called Mr. Flip. But that isn't like a classic pie in the face. That is someone holding a pie and shoving it into a face on someone.
Yeah, they just plant it in the face.
Real pie in the face, that is someone throwing it with intent in someone's face at a distance. And that is perhaps the first done by Mabel Normand in a Fatty Arbuckle movie called In a Noise from the Deep in 1913.
I just got a quote, Guinness Records here.
Okay, so they are the ones that are claiming this.
The first ballistic custard pie was discharged by Mabel Normand in the direction of Fatty Arbuckle.
Apparently, a lot of these comedy movies, they didn't have any scripts. They had like one idea for something they could do. I mean, he could be a butcher, he could be a cook or something like that. And we can follow him at work, and then maybe he finds a girl, and let's do some gags around that. Maybe 50% of the movie is pre-thought out. And when you came to a set, you would think out the rest 50%. Roscoe wasn't, he had a big scandal in the 20s. He was accused of raping and killing a woman at a party, I think. But there wasn't any real concrete evidence for this, and he was freed. That didn't really help him, because in the public eye, he was guilty. And so his career went downhill, and that's the end of him. The result of this scandal was that Hollywood, they started controlling everything much more. So to avoid scandals like these, they put some censorship in motion. All of their actors were like, you weren't allowed the same kind of creative freedom as you were in the 10s. Often they weren't allowed to do their own stunts. There would be stunt people standing in for the big stars. So this scandal actually affected Hollywood movies a lot.
I was thinking about Mabel Normand, though. She seems credited to have taught Charlie Chaplin more or less everything he knows about cinema, and also developed the Tramp together with him.
Oh, so she's really important then. She was a big star as well in the Keystone Company, I think, doing a lot of these...
Yeah, I watched a couple of movies, but yeah, for the action crowd, they are not heavy hitters.
Another heavy hitter in the comedy region is, of course, Harold Lloyd, which is somewhat forgotten sometimes. People tend to think Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, that's the main players of the silent movie era. But I think Harold Lloyd has some really nice energy to his movies. And his iconic glass character took a while to be conceived. He had a couple of different characters in the early 10s, but in the late 10s, he had his glass character. As a result, maybe, I think he started to get more refined comedy and faster paced. I mean, he has some really nice thumbles with cops. His movies is like Keystone Cops, only good. So like movies like Bumping into Broadway and From Hand to Mouth from 1919 are two movies that you really ought to check out. They're really nice and a lot of chases. The finale of Bumping into Broadway is sort of like a masterpiece, I think. Cops running around in a big mansion, Harold Lloyd trying to hide himself in a coat rack by being a coat. He's doing like a flip backwards off the knees of a cop over another cop, and they're chasing around stairs, and it's madness.
I mean, he kind of perfects those. We saw a bunch of more and more cops chase some dude in the 1900s. These are like a refined. We gotta find synonym for refined, but these are refined chase movies. Very good. I loved in was it in From Hand to Mouth, because I didn't watch that many Harold Lloyd. I didn't have the time, and some of the earlier stuff were, but these two at least have brilliant parts. And in the end, From Hand to Mouth, I think he goes around and collects the cops that are chasing him.
Yeah, that's a very nice scene as well.
It's a very funny variation when you have seen a bunch of cops chasing a guy, that he goes around and wants them to chase him because he wants to lead them to the bad guys. That of course has kidnapped a girl.
Yeah, and it's fast edited, it's frenetic. He has a really nice characterization to his run. He's very broad, but it's perfect for this kind of comedy. He swings his arms and his legs out a lot, and when everybody's chasing after, he's jumping in and out of holes like Bugs Bunny. I love him. I think he's Buster Keaton is without a doubt number one, but number two, Harold Lloyd for my money. And I think that sort of concludes our take on the 1910s from an action movie perspective. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of comedy movies are being made and perfected.
And the pure action cinema spectacle of the serials.
Pure like action movies as we see them today, that may not be that much going on in the 10s, I think.
No, they will arrive now, won't they, in the 20s?
Yes, they definitely will. And for our next episode, 1920, I think we'll actually do one movie and the entire year for our next episode. We will be taking a closer look at Douglas Fairbanks.